Welcome to the Peace, Harmony, and Joy podcast. I'm Ken Brandeis. I'm here with my co-host, Scott Frank. Scott's the guy who actually wrote the book on the topic, Peace, Harmony, and Joy. Scott, an interesting day today because we're not interviewing anyone else. You're interviewing me.
Yeah, Ken, I've been waiting for this for so long. I've known you for so long, and I know you got a fascinating story. You're such a smart person. I know there's so many people you're going to help, and I'm just excited to share your journey with the world. So let's get into it, Ken. Why don't you tell us a little background, kind of how you got to where you are today?
So I guess I'm so used to asking everyone else the questions, so I got to make sure I formulate an answer. So born and raised in New York, was I guess what I would consider to be sort of the typical upbringing. Two great parents, suburban household, liked sports, and that's about it. But ended up going to Emory University in Atlanta. Went there for 4 years. I had 4 good years there, and decided to stay in Atlanta to work because my family had moved out of New York. They moved out to actually Arizona, and I just sort of had nowhere else to go. So it was 1991. Our country was in a pretty good recession at the time. There were no what I would consider to be real stable jobs out there, and I didn't have a specific skill. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't an accountant or anything, and I ended up getting a sales job, and it was actually my father's suggestion because I couldn't find a job. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce, the DeKalb County Chamber of Commerce, and I approached them and said, I want to sell memberships. You don't have to pay me anything unless I sell something. So it's an easy thing for them to say yes to. But for me, it was a great opportunity to really develop my sales skills, but more importantly was to learn a lot about business and the type of businesses that were out there, because the chamber goes out to try and reach all different types of businesses, really everyone in their county. And I had free reign to call on anyone I wanted to, and I really took advantage of that. And it started to open my mind up to the business world that was around us. And there's a lot of ways to make a living in the world. So that got me sort of started in my my business world and my sales career. I ended up taking a variety of sales jobs from there in different industries. But the thing that I always had about me was I was always entrepreneurial in a sense. I always liked starting things or doing things. I would have ideas. A lot of people have ideas, but I like to act on them, whether it was within a company I was already working at, or whether it was for myself. So I actually started a dry cleaning delivery service, which was the first one that I started. And then I started a second business that was in technology. I was working for another tech company that I really enjoyed, and just had this idea, and got a couple of really great partners that we started, and we raised some money and kind of went through the typical process of that tech business is going. And then ultimately, with one of the partners from that last business, we actually bought a small company out of Buckhead in Atlanta that we grew for 17 years and ultimately sold. So that's making a long story really short. But a couple of years ago, when we sold the company, I worked out my contract for the company called Image First that bought us. And since then, I've been basically retired and trying to come up with different ways to give back to the world, which is one of the reasons that I'm sitting with you here today, right?
Yeah, it's funny, and we've known each other for a long time, and connected in a lot of different ways. But I think I'd like to think that this isn't the culmination, but I'd like to think this is the next phases of our journey together, and it's really worked out well. I want to come back to your sales skills in your sales career, because it's interesting. We talk about with Peace, Harmony, and Joy. It's getting in touch with your passions and your interests. And so, you know, tell us a little bit more just how you became aware that you had this propensity to be good at sales and kind of how you developed that and how sales to me is a scary thing. Many, if not most salespeople are commission, um, don't know if they're going to get paid next month or how much they're going to make. I mean, it's a kind of a scary life for a lot of people, but I think there's a lot of people that actually are, are capable and actually could be good at it and could love it, but they're scared to do it. So tell us a little bit more about your journey being a salesperson.
It's interesting. I actually just did a presentation about this last week. I was speaking to a college class. I've been doing some guest lecturing, and I talked about sales as a career because, like you said, most people don't really think of it. They think of all the other traditional career choices, and sales historically hasn't been one, although a lot of the universities are starting to offer classes in it, which I think is great. Um, but with me, part of it was because I really didn't think I could do anything else. I wasn't an attorney, I wasn't an accountant, I didn't like accounting, and I just sort of fell into it. But there's a few key things I think that I would look at and what I encourage the class that I spoke to look at about themselves to see if they would be a good fit. One thing is empathy. You know, people talk about that person's a people person, which is important. But the more important skill when it comes to a salesperson is empathy, is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So people confuse it with sympathy. Sympathy is when you can feel sorry for someone if they have something bad happen. But good salespeople really can put themselves in other people's shoes. And I think that is a key thing. And to really understand about yourself, and if you're good at that, that's one of the ways that you know if you'd be a good salesperson. But getting back to some of the things that you said, you do have to have a thick skin. You can't be afraid of rejection. Every time someone says no to you, that's one step closer to yes, as they say, as long as you understand why that is. Um, I'm trying to think of some of the other things that I talked about in the presentation. Um, just there's sort of an art and a science to sales that people don't really understand, but having the discipline to implement the sort of scientific parts of it, because it is formulaic in a way. It's a numbers game to an extent, and having the discipline to implement those things are super important as well. So like for me, sales sort of saved me because again, I don't know what I would have been doing, but I know the other disciplines of being an attorney like you are, or being an accountant, or doing these other things that most of my friends went and did. They just weren't for me. I wasn't that interested in the classroom, but I was always thinking of ways to whether it was start businesses or sell things. Like, for example, when I went to college, at the end of the semester, everyone would leave the dorms and they would leave the little mini fridges there. I would go pick them up in my old 1977 Delta. It was an Oldsmobile Delta 88, this huge car, and I'd put them in there and I'd put them in my fraternity house. And before the freshmen would come back, I'd clean them out and I'd bring them out to the freshmen that were coming and sell them for 50 bucks a pop or something. I was always like, I guess salesy just by the nature of the way I thought about things. So
Let me ask you, so that's great. Just to, a lot of people probably can identify with what you're saying. Like, hey, that's something like it sounds like me, or that's something that I would enjoy doing. How do you deal with the inconsistent paychecks? Because I think that is one of the things that holds people back. They don't know from month to month, and they want to have a family, whatever it is. They want to have a stable lifestyle. How do you deal, or what's the mindset you have to have as a salesperson that's on commission with, again, inconsistent paychecks?
I think that's certainly a very personal thing, because I think everyone's going to think of it differently, and everyone has different financial pressures in their lives. I mean, the way I dealt with it, and it's not probably a good answer for most people, I just never thought about it. I just never let it enter my mind that I may make less money now than I would in other times. And even more so than in a sales environment, just as an entrepreneur, when I started with Southern Medical Linen Service, we wrote a check for the business and then started out making nothing. And I had my, if I remember, I'm doing the math in my head right, but I think I just had my second kid. And I just never thought about it. It never entered my mind that we wouldn't succeed. So again, I'm not saying that's the right way to be for everybody. It's probably not a smart risk. If you were to do like a risk analysis, probably not the best way to look at things. But I just always believed that somehow things would come out all right in the end.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate in my life where they just sort of always have. Now, do we have tough times? Absolutely. Were there times where we were overextended at our businesses, at the business I was in? Absolutely. But, you know, eventually things, in my case, just out of pure persistence and will, ended up coming out on the right side.
Yeah. So to me, that's the epitome of peace, harmony, and joy. Uh, again, if you can enter into things calmly and that and really know why you're getting into them. I mean, you're a thoughtful person, so you obviously thought you could do this. But the more important thing is once you figure it out, what your passion is, what you're interested in, and what you want to throw yourself into. Um, it's amazing how I like to say the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, will give you what you need. And I love the fact that you didn't worry about it. And I think part of it is that you did do some things earlier in your life. You did have some sales experiences. You did have some you knew not everybody had to buy. You knew the how the kind of a little bit how sales worked. So you had some confidence. But more importantly, I think you had confidence in yourself. You just knew that for whatever reason in your life, whenever you worked hard, things worked out for you. And I think that as people try to live their true best lives, I think so many people are scared to change. They have a job that they don't like, but it pays well. It's a consistent paycheck. I got a family. It's scary. Well, maybe there's some baby steps you can take. If you think sales is more where you're at, maybe there you can, on a part-time basis, try out sales and see if you like it, see if you can get good at it. But I just think there's so many people that are scared and they're not living their true best lives, and they're not having the joy that they deserve.
Well, I think you hit on it, and when you said I had some experience in it. So I learned the discipline of sales, and when you learn it, you trust in the process. And to get back to peace, harmony, and joy, I think that probably gave me the peace that I needed, that I wasn't losing sleep every night because I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta, you know, pay this or pay that. So understanding the sort of the discipline and the numbers game of it, and knowing, my aptitude for it, I think really helped me. Um, and I think, like you're saying, for people that are interested in getting into it, there probably are ways that they can start to learn about it or dip their toe into the water before they jump in and take an all commission job and end up, potentially drowning because they did it maybe before they were ready to do it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I want to take this now, translating this into being an entrepreneur. And so, entrepreneur is a combination of sales and a whole lot of other things.
Mhm.
And I think there's lots of people that would love to run their own business, right? They're working in a corporation. They're like, I'm just a number, or I'm just, I'm doing a job that I don't really enjoy, but it's a nice paycheck. But I've got an idea for something. I want to be my own boss, but they're scared, right? They're like, what if it doesn't work? And it's, there's the startup costs and all that stuff. But you were an entrepreneur. Can you talk a little bit about how you got confident in that? I mean, sales, it looks like your sales experience gave you confidence that you could do things that you put your mind to, but still being an entrepreneur is more than just selling. There's operations, there's all these other things that go into running a business, starting a business. Talk a little bit how that all played out for you.
Yeah, and again, I just actually spoke about this at a bunch of entrepreneurship classes. So the other thing I talk about is how do you know if being an entrepreneur is right for you? And it's not right for everybody. In fact, I'd say it's not right for most people. Um, but for me, it was right. And, I guess for me, the advice I gave and I would give to people is, first of all, almost practice being an entrepreneur while you're working for someone else, for another company. Um, do the things that an entrepreneur has to do to be successful working for someone else. it can be as simple as, can you be at work every single day without excuse on time? And I've been talking to, these are 20-year-old college kids that are looking, they're in entrepreneurship programs. So if you can't do that for someone else, don't think you can do it for yourself. So try and break down the pieces that you need to be successful as an entrepreneur, and make sure you can do those on a consistent basis. I always looked at my businesses as we were hitting singles every day. I, I never swung for home runs. It just wasn't, to me, good businesses are consistently successful because that's what our customers expected. They wanted to see us every single day perform. And again, we didn't need to hit home runs. We just needed to be good every day. We didn't need to be incredible any day, but good every single day. So I think that's what I would try and prove to myself. If I wanted to know whether it was a good risk to bet on myself and do this, I would try and prove that to myself. Can I be consistent doing the things that an entrepreneur needs to do every single day, working for someone else? So you don't have a lot of risk doing that. And if you can prove to yourself for 1 year's time, I can do this every single day, what I would then do is start to do the homework after hours, is build your business plan, is do everything you can do when you're not working for someone else, after hours, on the weekends, whatever it is. So, if you do choose to move forward, you hit the ground running, is you really can try and get the revenue coming in as quickly as possible. But there's a lot of things you've got to do, everything from making a logo to lining up vendors to identifying prospects to, I mean, there's just a ton of different things that need to be done. And there's no reason you can't do those after hours or on the weekend. I look back when I had my technology company, it's called Wireless On Ramp, and every weekend, myself, Stu, and Jeff, the three partners, we would get together at Jeff's house and we would work on this every single weekend. Yeah, would I prefer to be watching the football game or doing something else? Absolutely. But investing that time up front before we actually move forward with starting our business meant our lead time to actually turning a profit was shorter. And it helped us all financially.
I think that's really some great advice you've given. And, what I want to kind of just sum it up is, I think so many people look at entrepreneurs and they see someone who's successful, and it's like either A, they think it just like they're natural and, and it just, was easy for them, or they also maybe even think like it was overnight success. Like, all right, I'm going to start it, and then next week we're making millions. I think most of them do what you did. First off, they do the homework. They understand what they're getting into. They try a little something. They do a little even soul searching, like, what's it feel like to be an entrepreneur. But then it's almost, I love the example you used with hitting singles. It's like, if you can get 1% better every day, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, I mean, you're gigantic improvement. And you were, I think probably to a lot of people, you look like an overnight success. I mean, you took this small organization and made it this gigantic success. You sold it for a whole bunch of money, but they don't know behind the scenes. They don't know all the singles and doubles you hit and all the just the every day trying to get a little better. And I think that's the thing. If you figure out what you want, I actually think probably almost everybody could be an entrepreneur, because I think almost everybody has an idea, and they, if they believed in themselves and they did the homework and they committed to doing a little something every day, I think just about everybody could do this. But I think it's scary, right? It's because they don't teach you this stuff in school. They don't, and it's the unknown. It's just so much simpler to work for somebody else and have a stable paycheck. But I think your real life experiences, I mean, you're living proof that it can be done, and so much of it is also confidence. And you've seen how in your life, when you work hard, put your mind to something, you can succeed. And I think anybody that finds something they're passionate about, if they put their heart and their soul into it and really stick with it, I think you'll see you'll be successful, and it'll be a joyful experience.
I think one of the key things you said is that, you know, people look at really successful people and think they're overnight successes. And I know a lot of people that are much more successful than I am, that have started companies, sold companies, successful entrepreneurs. And when you dig in and you get them to really tell their stories, I don't know any of them that are overnight successes. I really don't. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice with maybe like shows like Shark Tank and things like that. And we think that there's these quick fixes and quick turnarounds to these things, or we look at a Mark Cuban or people like that and we say, wow, just we all we know about is the glitz side and the success that they've had. But I guarantee you, if you were to kind of peel back the layers of the onion, you'd learn about a real gritty story of determination where him or other people had to scrap and fight their way to get to where they are today. I mean, there's just, again, not that I don't know of any shortcuts. And again, I know a lot of people that have done this. And so I think that's a key point that you
Yeah.
just made, is that there's just an incredible amount of work and a very bumpy and wavy road that gets you to the finish line, and you don't always get there. I've had 3 companies. Sometimes people have 5 companies, 10 companies until they get there. Very rarely does someone hit it with their first company, and you have to the key is that you learn from your mistakes and that ultimately you get better.
Yeah,
So,
and I want to tie it back again to peace, harmony, and joy, because I think if you are calm and you are thoughtful and you prepare yourself, which is what you did, and and the harmony is finding something you're passionate about. I mean, if you're truly passionate about it, it doesn't even feel like work. I mean, it's almost like playing a game, like playing a video game or playing tennis or something, and it's just amazing over time how you can get good at tennis, you can get good at video games, and you can get good, it being an entrepreneur. And it's again, I think that's something that you probably find in all successful entrepreneurs. They're passionate about it, and they are smart, and they've taken the time, and then they have the success. And again, I think anybody that feels like it's something they want to do, I think they could do it if you're passionate about it and you are thoughtful about it. I think it's there for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. And in fact, like you said, it's probably almost never going to be easy.
yeah, so the passion thing is it's an interesting word, right? It's I think overused in a way in the business language. So if you look at my last business, I owned a commercial laundry. We cleaned medical linen, okay, scrubs and sheets and towels and blankets. So most people would look at that and say, I would never want to do that. And I would look at the same way. I certainly didn't grow up and say I want to be this linen mogul, right? It wasn't what I was looking for. But I think the passion comes in the owning and running a business. And that's what I was really passionate about, is I wanted to build something and grow something. Um, so that's where it comes in for me. And then you mentioned it's almost like playing tennis. Well, I look at that. I look at business like it's a sport. I'm too old to play most sports now, but I love them. And to me, business really was a sport. There's so many aspects of playing sports, whatever it is. To me, it's more team sports related in business because you have employees and they're part of your team. And so to me, that was the passion and the fun of it was was trying to lead this team and get them to be better at what they do and bigger and get more customers and more successful, and everyone had a piece and a part, just like in a football team. In order to have a successful play, 11 people have to do the right thing, and if one person makes a mistake, they blow the whistle and march it back 5 yards.
Yep.
So
And I want to tie that back to peace, harmony, joy. In order to have a successful business, people got to respect each other. There's got to be peace, and the harmony is truly finding everybody's role. Because if every role isn't done, the organization's not going to be successful. And if everybody's doing the same job, I mean, that's definitely not going to be good for the business. I mean,
right.
it's amazing. Everybody playing their role, playing their instrument, making music together. It's amazing the joyful experiences you can have. And it doesn't mean every day is easy. It doesn't mean every day is fun, even. But but our goal is to have as much joy as we can. And I think when you can build these teams, it's amazing the joyful experiences you can create. And that's I think one of the reasons entrepreneurs, really, get addicted to it.
And I think so. You said it's not to, it may or may not be fun. I don't look at things as being fun in the business world. I don't look at, like, I live in Arizona now and we do hiking. My wife makes me hike up mountains. I don't think that's fun, but the feeling of accomplishment you get when you get up to the top of the mountain, that's better than fun to me. And I think that's the way I looked at
Yeah.
things in the business world, is they were just gratifying, maybe is the word, I
Yeah.
guess.
I mean, it's no different than working out. I think a lot of people don't like to do treadmill or lift weights, but that's how you build yourself up so that you can, live a healthy life and do a lot of the things like hiking up tall mountains. And those are, those are the things you got to invest to have the joyful experiences. So, we say less stress, more joy. Doesn't doesn't mean every single moment's joy. But by the way, I think even when you're lifting weights or you're hiking, you know, if you want to have joy, you can. You can start. Boy, it sure, the fresh air sure smells good here, and I'm with my wife, and I'm doing a cool mountain. I mean, there's even ways to find it there, but it's, I think that the overall point if you're going to have a peaceful, harmonious, joyful life, find what you're passionate about, put yourself into it. It's amazing how the things you're passionate about are going to lead to joyful experiences. Don't do it for the paycheck, and that's where so many people are not happy and feel a lot of anxiety and not feeling a whole lot of joy.
Yeah. So
I want to
I
ask you one more thing. Peace, Harmony, Joy Alliance, our overall goal is peace on earth. And I think you brought up an important word that is fundamental to peace on earth. And in order to have peace on earth, you've got to respect and understand and have empathy with people. You've got to put yourself in their shoes. It's not just enough to not argue with them or not call them names. But I mean, if you're not feeling good about them, if you can't really truly put yourself in their shoes, there's always going to be this edge, this feeling like, yeah, I'm not being mean to them, but um, how do as a salesperson, you said you had empathy, you have this empathy skill. How do you develop that? How do you utilize that? Because I truly think peace on earth is going to require people to empathize with people, and I do think it's a skill that can be learned and developed, and is fundamental to humanity's existence.
Well, it's a big question. I'm not so sure I'm the right guy to answer it, but in my experience, I learned at a very young age, just professionally, how to ask questions and listen. And as a salesperson, you're taught how to ask open-ended questions to start, to get people talking about whatever the challenges that you're trying to solve for them. And then you kind of you get more narrow as you go. And learning how to ask questions and listen to answers, I think help me put myself in their shoes, because a good salesperson will, when they're talking to a potential buyer, if you could put yourself in their shoes and understand what their challenges are and what they're dealing with and what problem they're trying to solve, then what you can do is take what they've told you and then put it back to them in a solution, in a nice package, hopefully leveraging your product or service. And that's how you sell a lot. And so the empathy, I think, comes from asking asking questions and genuinely listening to their answers, and not assuming you know what the answers are going to be, because you may know what they're going to be 90% of the time. But boy, that 10% of the time where they give you a key nugget that none of your competitors got out of them, and you present that back to them as part of your solution, you're going to get that deal. And there's all kinds of great examples of that. And again, I just spoke at a school, so the thing that's coming to my head is, I don't know if you seen the movie Air, the Nike movie?
Yes.
Okay, so you saw that movie Air. The part about that movie that I absolutely loved was when the main character flew to go talk to Michael Jordan's parents, his mother mostly, because she was the decision maker in this. And he was able, even though he risked relationships with the agent and everyone else, but he was able to get that key piece of information. He was able to get out of her that she wanted Michael to have a piece of the business, to have some ownership of the business, and to get reward if it was successful. And that was the key thing. So he was able to do that by showing empathy and asking the question and get it out of her. And then ultimately, that's what they presented back, and they were able to do the impossible, which was to get Michael Jordan. So that's
Right.
my favorite part of the movie. But I think it's a great example of a lot of things. But I think of asking the questions and not being afraid to get the answer and then figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah. Well, I think you just told the difference between a good salesperson and a great salesperson. And I mean, that's such a important skill to develop. And I think so many salespeople think it's just a matter of contacting enough people and just having a good enough product. But I do think the really great salespeople can sell just about anything, and it's because they really truly get to understand. They listen. They're curious. How can I help this person? And they really do want to help the customer, not just sell them something. And I
Right.
think that's if we could all live our lives with everybody around us, all human beings that we come in contact with, not trying to sell them something, but truly trying to help them, this world would be a wonderful place. There would be no fighting. There would be no anger. It'd be a peaceful place. So I appreciate you sharing that and just listening and being curious and truly trying to understand people. And one of the things you find is that most people, no matter what they look like, where they're from, what they believe in, most people we actually are pretty similar, and it makes us relatable. We may have some different religious beliefs, may have a little political beliefs different, but at our core and the majority of what we believe is actually pretty similar, and it allows you to understand what their issues are, where they're coming from, and help you solve their problems.
Yeah. So I look, I agree 100%. But even if you're not similar from someone or a different group, by asking questions and listening, you identify the areas where maybe you don't understand, and all of a sudden you can start to understand. So
You'll have the ability to sell empathy, to be empathetic and actually sell help. That's what we're talking about, and that's what's good salespeople. They actually help people. They don't just sell products.
agreed.
All right, well, Ken, we're going to end on that note, and I'm going to do my best Ken Brandeis impersonation.
Go for it.
It's been a pleasure. So many wise thoughts you've shared with our audience today, and really appreciate you. And to our audience, we're going to encourage you to find us on social media, share us, like us, and we love 5 stars. And most importantly, join us on our joyful journey, Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance. We look forward to our next time we're together. Have a good day, everybody.